Welcome back to the Rehab for Runners podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lisa, and today's special guest is a PT and run coach from Spark Healthy Runner, Dr. Dwayne Scotty.
Hey, Lisa, what's going on? Thank you for having me on the show.
Yeah, thank you for being here. I know I was on your show, and now I'm so excited to have you on mine.
Yes, all about the big toe. That was a great episode.
Yes, and today we are not talking about big toe. We are talking about growing as a runner. And I saw online that you recently ran the Dopey Challenge in January. I feel like that is the ultimate challenge as a runner. Can you talk more about your experience with that and how you were able to grow as a runner with that challenge compared to other races?
Yeah, that was such a surprisingly rewarding challenge. I signed up for it for fun to begin with, as it wasn't my goal marathon. I had my goal marathon at the Cape Cod Marathon in October that I did, a full blown marathon training cycle, right? I'm trying to like get a PR. That was a breakthrough marathon for me. And, the Dopey challenge was okay, I can cover the miles. I've done a couple of marathon training cycles where I've been over 50 miles per week. So I'm like, okay, I can cover 48.6 in 4 days as part of this Dopey challenge. So for those that don't know, it is 4 days of running, a 5K, a 10K, a half marathon, and then a marathon. And for me, it was special because it was a whole family affair. So, I have two daughters. So my youngest daughter, she's definitely not a runner. Like, complains anytime she would need to run. She's like volleyball player, like doesn't want to run whatsoever. She actually ran her first 5K. So the whole family ran the 5K together. And then the 10K I ran with my older daughter, who does enjoy running. So she's a senior in high school, and she's done like indoor track a couple of seasons, and she likes to run for just recreationally, right? So for her, we've done a bunch of 5Ks before together, her and I, and this was her first 10K. So, that was kind of special for her to be able to conquer her first 10K. And then the half marathon I ran with my wife, which that was her third half marathon. And it was like a big comeback marathon for her after taking some time off due to an injury. So it was kind of special to do that half marathon. It was kind of a crazy year because there was a lightning storm, so they actually shortened the half marathon to 7.1 miles, and so we had to do our other miles in the parking lot, going around the Epcot parking lot at 3 a.m. Before the storm and the race. But we got our 13.1 in, and then the marathon, I was just honestly running it for the experience, and I had no expectations. And, I didn't put together a hard training cycle. I had like literally a 3 or 4 week because I really recovered well after the Cape Cod Marathon. So, the expectation would go out, have fun, feel strong at the end. And if I felt good, then I would like, kind of go for it and kind of push at the end. And remarkably, I felt like really, really good, and it was just such a fun marathon to run. If someone's listening to this and they've run a lot of like competitive races, and maybe you get in your own head or you feel pressure of, just trying to go fast, I highly recommend Disney races for just like a fun race where there's no pressure. There's runners of all abilities there. And it was just really, really fun, honestly, to run that course and finish the challenge. And yeah, surprisingly, I actually came within 4 minutes of my marathon PR that I got in October. And, I was definitely surprised. I wasn't, planning on running a 3:44 marathon as part of the Dopey challenge. But I felt great, and I felt strong at the end. And most importantly, I felt healthy, and I was able to continue doing what I love, running and training and just getting out for my mental clearing miles. And I think a huge part of that is really what we're going to talk about today, is kind of like how we grow as runners in our journey. And, my journey, it's been like a 13-year journey for me as I started as an adult onset runner. And I finally have put together like a framework, kind of a 6-step framework of how we can do this as adults and not get injured, and also continue to get better. Whether it is, you want to get faster, or like you want to just be able to do it for longevity and be able to get outside and get those mental clearing miles in. So I'm excited to share some of this framework with you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Your first daughter sounds like me in high school. I played different sport and did not enjoy running. So I was like, yep, that sounds like me. But that's amazing. I feel like I've heard of these Disney races. They look so fun. And not saying like other races aren't fun, but it looks more like a celebration of running versus it being like a little bit more intense of a race. So I think, that's amazing. That definitely helps with your mindset too when you're running, especially these, 4 days, like this incredible challenge. So I think that's really, really cool. So you mentioned a breakthrough marathon and like being able to grow as a runner, an adult onset runner. I love that. So how were you able to break through with this past marathon, and what were like your steps for this breakthrough in your growth?
Yeah, it really was because prior to, so kind of give you the quick backstory, since physical therapy school, always like a gym rat, right? Like always worked out in the gym 5 days a week, only did running on the treadmill for quote unquote cardio, right? To kind of lean out. And then unfortunately, I wound up tearing my labrum in my hip playing some volleyball in my backyard with my buddies. And I did wind up getting a hip arthroscopy surgery. And after that, my surgeon was like, you know what, you just can't run on the treadmill just because like the anterior shear causing the femoral head to come forward. You know what I'm talking about, but just for your listeners to kind of let you know, it wasn't advisable to use the treadmill for running because I was a dad at the time. I had two young girls. They were like 1 and 3. I was like, I can't be like out of shape like for the first time in my life. So what do I do, doc? And he's like, well, just go out and run. And I'm like outside. And this is actually, it's probably coming up, honestly, at the time of this recording is probably like my 13-year anniversary for the first run I ever went outside. Um, because it was still cold. And I remember it being the beginning of March and I live in Connecticut. And I was like, yeah, like you want me to go outside and run? Like, who does that? Like, that's kind of silly. But I was kind of determined to like get back in shape after being non-weight bearing for 4 weeks because I had a chondral defect as well and a loose body. So I, started running outside and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool actually. This is nice. I actually like looking out, my surroundings, being outdoors. I was like, okay, maybe I can, do this running thing. And then, one thing led to the other, kind of like most runner stories. It's like, hey, yeah, people do these road races. So I signed up first 5K, absolutely loved it, and was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Then you try to improve, right? And then you're like, oh, can I run longer? And did first 10K. And then half marathon was like my jam for, 7, 8 years. Love doing that. But right in the beginning of this running journey, I got my first running related injury that's like very specific to runners. It's upper hamstring tendinopathy or proximal hamstring tendinopathy, pain in the butt, literally right underneath your sit bone. And I was a orthopedic certified specialist. Like my specialty was like sports medicine, treating in the clinic. And I was like, all right, I got this. Like I can heal this. And then I, did some research on this injury and I was like, wow, this is actually quite different than like most hamstring strains or like the younger adolescent athlete that I would treat with a hamstring problem. So as I kind of delved into that, I really got into more of running specific injuries and realized that like runners need to be treated differently, especially as adults. Like teens, 20s, kind of gray line there. We can get away with some things. Definitely once you get in your 30s and then 40s and beyond, runners need to be treated differently. So that's where kind of my passion kind of went to, you know, this is what I really want to learn more about is how to really help runners. And selfishly, it was like my own kind of personal journey, right? And then once I got over that and realized that, hey, stretching your hamstring is actually the worst thing you could do for this condition, and that we actually have to load the tendon with specific exercises. And once I implemented that, got over that injury, I was like, okay, I need to share this with more people. As we go along. And it really was focusing on like run specific strength, which I know you're passionate about, right? And that was kind of the whole kind of beginning of my journey. And then I got to this point where you reach this plateau and you kind of, in your fitness, you stop getting PRs after running for like a while, right? It's like I'm 8, 9 years into my running journey, and you hit this plateau. And it really wasn't until I realized that there are other things besides the running and the strength training, and really kind of blended out really what we're going to talk about today, the framework. And the big one is mindset, that really helped me for Cape Cod Marathon in the fall, as well as nutrition and recovery. So I didn't really value those elements as much as I have really embraced these last 2 years of really putting like two really good marathon training cycles together now. So those were like the keys. And for me, the marathon the year before, I really had a lot of pre-race anxiety, and I didn't know that I wasn't anxious for the race. If you asked me, I felt really confident going in. I finished the training. I felt really, really good. But I realized that it messed with my GI system. It was the first time ever. It was like such a bad marathon. I felt terrible. I was bloated. Had to use the porta potty a couple of times, and I never ever used one during a race. And the 60 something half marathons, whatever that I've done. So I was like, what was this? And it came down to having some pre-race anxiety. So once I really got a handle of kind of the mindset piece and really reframing how I think about training, how I think about running, how I think about my goals, how I think about, how we can put pressure on ourselves, quite honestly, as runners. And most of us are kind of type A personalities, I find, in the running community. And until I worked on the mindset, like that was key for me for that breakthrough in the fall, is getting into a relaxed state, right? Like it was at Cape Cod. So, and I love the beach. So I went there for my own personal vacation, right? Didn't have to juggle work, family, business, all that stuff that I was doing for the marathon the year before. And all of that was hyping up my anxiety levels because I was doing so much work leading up to the race and even the morning of the race, because we had a lot of local runners doing the race. So kind of getting in my proper like mindset before the race was super, super helpful. So that was kind of the keys, I would say, for this last marathon.
I think, you know, it's it's something that we don't realize we have to work on until it's like a little too late, and then it's like, okay, wait, this is the missing piece. I know for me last week was, so I had a marathon or half last Saturday. So last week at this time, I remember just psyching myself out basically for this race because and it was like I was making excuses for myself. Like I knew I wanted to PR. I didn't want to put the pressure of PR, but then people were saying like it was going to rain. It was hilly. I didn't even realize all these things. And it was like me just making excuses, but then coming back and being like, no, I can do this. Like reassurance, like really working on that mindset and then working on the mindset throughout the entire race. And I think that's something that I did different this race compared to other races where I would just get like mad at myself or frustrated with myself or just totally in my head about something that's supposed to be fun and enjoyable. So I can completely relate to that. Let's talk more about mindset a little bit because, like I said before, like I think it's something that a lot of runners don't realize that they need until they, it's kind of a little too late, but it's also not too late to adjust it. As a college softball player, I have this like mentality of it's all or nothing. And that's really not the case with races. Like, we're not running as our career. This is supposed to be fun. So, how did you prepare? I know you said like the week leading up to it, you were able to kind of relax. Anything specific that you did mentally, like the week of or the entire training plan or during the race that helped?
Yeah. And I think just kind of, I guess, stepping back and like looking at the big picture here, like growing in our running journey, we need to align our mental priorities, right? So, it always starts with a really powerful and strong why. Like, why are we doing this? Right. So, even just from the beginning, whether you're listening to this and you're looking at training for your first half marathon or you're looking to run your 50th marathon, you're finishing your 50 states, and you're like, why am I signing up for this race? Or why do I want to run? Like, let's just even say if we didn't have a race, right? Like, determine your why. Are you doing this for health and fitness? Are you doing it for mental health? Are you doing it for stress relief? Are you doing it because it's something that everyone said you would never be a runner? Or are you doing it, right? Like everyone has their own why. So I think really determining and doing like the deeper work of like, why are you doing this? Because I can tell you, like, my why definitely changed over the years, right? In the beginning, it was to get in shape after surgery. And then it was a new challenge for me because I just like new challenges. And it was like, can you do this? Can you do this? And just challenge the body, challenge you, right? Like, be able to do that. And then when I went through, actually, I went back for my academic doctoral degree, a PhD. That was 6 years of like hell. Honestly, I needed the running for stress relief. That was why I was doing it then. I was totally sleep deprived, which wasn't good for recovery, but I needed the running for the stress relief. And then really these last, honestly, 4 or 5 years, I've really, since COVID, I lost my mom due to COVID, like just dealing with all of, right, like everything that COVID brought us during that time period. I really embraced, like, my why was, okay, I need to get out here and just like enjoy some mental clearing miles. And now it's part of my lifestyle. And I do take 2 full rest recovery days throughout the week because I train hard on the other days. But on the days when I if for some reason I didn't run, like, my mood is definitely different. So you can ask my wife. So it is more of, just more well-being is like my why now, and to be consistent with it, and it's part of my life. And yes, it is an area that I want to continue to grow and continue to improve even as I age. I'm 44 now, so the misconception everyone has, like, oh, you turn 40, everything like goes downhill after that, or you can't be as athletic in your 40s, right? Like, I'm going to take all those misconceptions and like turn them around, right? Like, so that's kind of my why. But you got to start with that strong why, and then you have to set like personal goals for yourself, and they need to be realistic goals, and you have to have realistic expectations on your training. So, for instance, like for you planning a wedding, right? It's like, I'm not going to recommend during the most stressful time period of, getting wedding planning done. And as things, because come on, let's be honest, all right, there's always drama at some wedding, right? You're going to have personal stressors that come up. You will, no matter how much you plan in advance, right? Like, I'm not going to recommend that you peak in your training for like your goal race during the time period where you're going to get like those most personal stresses. So, we have to think about that. Or, you changing jobs, kids, right? Like all the other life things that are happening for you. So for me, like with kind of still doing some teaching, university wise, it's like I plan my stuff semester wise, and then I plan my stuff around my girls' travel volleyball schedule. So I always loved running a half marathon in April. That was my jam, right? You kind of train for a 3 month block starting January, and then you run a half marathon in April. But that's the busiest travel time period for my girls. So I'm in Philly a couple weekends, Boston, I'm in Providence, I'm going to Georgia. It's like we're all up the East Coast. And it's like for me to try to think about peaking in training and doing my hardest part of training during that traveling, it's not going to work. So I don't even I don't force the issue. I'm not like, oh, I have to run my local half marathon because it's in April. So I work around that. Now I run my half marathon later in the beginning of June, which, you pray the weather's not going to be too hot, but that's what works with my schedule, right? So you have to like be realistic, set goals based upon your life situation. And if you did have an injury or you had a setback during training, readjust your expectations for your goal for that race. And like I just had this conversation with a client yesterday, and she was dealing with PHT for 2, 3 years, pushing through it. Finally, she, decided to invest and do something about it. And we're working together. And now this whole training block has been focused on getting her healthy and running consistently. And we're not doing any speed work right now because we're getting her healthy, building the strength, fixing the contributing factors. So we just had a conversation for her pre-race call. She's doing the New York City half marathon this weekend. And I told her I had to go back to, okay, remember what you told me when we first started working together? What were your goals? It was to build strength, get healthy. Okay. So I know you're running this half marathon, but remember, those are your goals. And that's what we've been focusing on during this time period. So she can't set goals that were what she did her half marathon in October because it's not realistic because we haven't been doing speed work, right? And we haven't been doing those things. So I think setting up the realistic expectations is like super important because if you go in and being like, well, I ran 144 half marathon October and now I'm actually working with like a running coach and I'm getting stronger. And so I should be able to like do that again. Right. Not necessarily because I haven't been designing training that works on speed, right. And improving those elements. So I, just having those expectations is super important. And as runners, sometimes I think most people think it's all linear, their progress, and every single race they should do better. And then you have to take so many different variables into account in terms of your training, life stressors, weather, right? Race day circumstances, how you felt that week, right? Illnesses, right? Like things come up that you're going to need to adjust your expectations. So I think those are the things to take into account when we look at mindset and how we align our priorities, set realistic goals, and then try to get yourself in the best mental state, having realistic goals going into the race.
Yeah, 100%. I know for me, I had to have a little chat with myself. Those are always the best. And it was basically leading up to this half. I was like, I want to PR it. And then I also want to like knock like 4 minutes off. And it was like, okay, just because I want to do that doesn't mean it's realistic for me. Like, let's back it up a little bit and let's look at my training, how my training's been going. I was sick for like 2 weeks out of my training block. So there were some hiccups going on. And I think it was more of like, just because I want to do it doesn't mean it's realistic and it should be my goal. I think also taking that pressure off of myself helped a lot, and just being able to, like, when it comes to goals, like you said, like, you don't know what's going to happen on race day. You don't know how you're going to feel. You don't know how you're going to sleep before, like the stress. You don't know what's going to pop up. So being able to set these goals where you can control your outcome versus letting race day control your outcome. So I know for me that mindset shift really helped a lot. Like, fueling every 30 minutes, not looking at my watch and running on effort, and like things that were more in my control. And that is going to lead to bigger progress down the road. It might not be linear, but those small things will add up. And I know, you mentioned your nutrition changed a little bit with your breakthrough race. I know for me, I wasn't fueling, and then I finally learned how to fuel for my marathon. So you could say I had a breakthrough and actually realized I had to fuel. But talk to me a little bit about your fueling strategy and how that helped with your breakthrough marathon.
Yeah, so fueling, oh my goodness, is so important. And I didn't really embrace the importance of this until really 3 years ago when we had a registered dietitian who's part of our team, Brooke, shout out. And, she educated me a lot about this. And this is a very common problem that most runners have where they feel like if I eat something, then my stomach's going to get upset. And the reason why your stomach gets upset is because it's not used to actually having food in it. And while you're running, most of your blood flow is going to your musculoskeletal system. It's going to your muscles so you can run. So it's not prioritizing blood flow to your gut. So your gut is not going to digest and work efficiently as it should during running. So what you have to do is actually you have to train your gut, just like we think of training our muscles with strength exercises or running, a run plan. You need to really train the gut because I was definitely always that fasted runner. I run it early in the morning, so I would no like let's be honest, no one's hungry when they wake up at 4 or 5 a.m., 6 a.m. Right? Like, so you hear that all the time too. Is like, well, I'm not going to eat because I'm not hungry. Like, no one's hungry then, right? But I really forced myself to start with small, actionable, easily digestible foods. A couple of my favorites and staples are medjool dates, graham crackers, bananas. Right? They're all three easy on the gut. Maybe put a little almond butter there, just get a little bit of protein. And those have been like game changing, honestly, is just fueling before my run. So any run that I do more than 45 minutes now, I'm fueling, even if it's an easy run. Like right now, my training yesterday is an hour easy run. I still fueled before it. And same thing with gym workouts and, strength training. I never used to, because it was always, unfortunately, like diet culture and all of that was like, well, if you're fasted, then that means you're like burning more fat. So then, your body's going to burn fat and you're not just going to burn the fuel that you had. But trust me, if you've never tried it before, um, run with some fuel, you're going to feel much better. And it's going to kickstart your recovery process after your run, so you can continue improving as a runner day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, versus being underfueled. And then you get in this cycle of you can improve because now your body is literally like running on empty, and it doesn't have the nutrients it needs to actually repair the muscles that you're trying to strengthen with your strength work, or improve in efficiency with your running. And then you don't recover properly and you can't like advance. So fueling is like huge. And then obviously, like in our 6 step, to grow as a runner, like nutrition is one of these steps. And that's where, like, as being a physical therapist, I always just in the beginning focused on like the strength and the run. And this is where the mindset, nutrition, and then, recovery we could talk about, really kind of came into play.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely used to be that runner that did not fuel before run, and I'd run in the morning and I have low blood sugar, and I would just be like, why am I shaking? Like, why do I feel like I'm about to pass out? Maybe that means I need to stop running, and I'm just going to blame it on the running. When in reality, it was my fueling strategy. And, all those things that you listed are great. I know for me, I like a frozen waffle with peanut butter is always like my go to pre run. It doesn't need to be like, I thought it was always like you have to eat a big bowl of oatmeal before a run, or like a full breakfast, but it doesn't have to be like that, and it really
Right.
shouldn't be like that. I have experimented with like a protein shake before a run. I do not recommend that. So keep it light,
No.
keep it simple.
Right.
You'll learn from your mistakes if your body doesn't like it, but that can really, really help with your fueling. And one thing I know I wish I did during the marathon was play around with different fueling strategies, play around with the timing that you're fueling, and then you'll be able to recognize which one fits best with your running. Because I wish I was like 2 weeks before the marathon and I was like, I feel like I should try a gel with caffeine, and it was like, I was just throwing a Hail Mary out there with my 20 miler. But I really wish that, luckily everything was fine, but I really wish that I played around with different fuel and like tried different fuel before settling in on what worked best for me. But like you said, like, let's continue talking about the 6 steps runners, because I could talk about fueling forever. But when it comes to these 6 steps to growing as a runner, it doesn't, I'm just speaking like, what would the listener think? I don't think, or they might think like it's a linear, like you go through step one and then step two, and then you have to pass these steps before you get to the next one. But when you see a runner growing, do you see it as this thing where they have to go like step by step, or it's a little bit of each thing before they have that breakthrough in running? I hope that made sense.
That did. No, that was a great way to ask that question, because I've never been asked that before. So that was, I like how you framed that. And I guess my my answer to that is that, maybe kind of talking about the analogy I like to use, like your running should be reliable and durable, like a well-built house, right? Like everyone wants a house that's going to give them like a lifetime of memories and is, going to be low maintenance, right? Like things are going to be falling apart like every month, right? You don't want your body falling apart every month in your running journey, right? So you want to maybe, if you get something creeps up, you take care of it, right? Really quickly. So in looking at these 6 steps, they really all need to be performed ideally at the same time. But depending upon where you've been in your journey, you might need to focus on one area more than the others, if that makes sense. But I do feel like the mindset is a place where you do have to start. And you have to, just like, building a house, they have to work on like the designs, the plans, the permitting for like the house, right? Like you have to almost like plan this out, think about your why, like everything we just talked about in terms of mindset, and be in the right frame of mind to maybe start this new training cycle or maybe take up running consistently. And you have to make it a priority, right? Does it work with your schedule? Does it work with your life? All of that. So that mindset piece does need to occur, I think, first and foremost. And most people don't do that. They kind of skip that. So I think getting it done first, and then obviously, just like my bias is definitely more toward having a strong, solid foundation. And in order to have, like, let's be honest, depending upon the studies that you look at, like 7 to 8 of the people listening to this right now, out of 10 of you are going to get injured at some point. So the injury risk is very, very high for people who are running. It's not that running causes injuries, it's that our bodies are not prepared for the demands that we're placing on running. And most likely, there are a lot of training errors that are occurring, which place those demands a little too high on the body. So, the more that we develop a strong running body, so then we can enjoy lifelong injury free running. And that's like the foundation of the house is your strength training. So, for like myself, in my journey, I mentioned, right, always working out in the gym and doing exercise, like I had a pretty strong, solid foundation. And we work with many athletes that, want to start running and they've been working out, they've been strengthening their muscles. So they have a solid foundation already. And now we usually need to tweak it and add in some more run specific exercises that they're not getting with CrossFit boot camp class, or just doing like the machines in the gym, where they are training on one leg, because we're always on one leg when we run. They're implementing jump training exercises such as plyometrics, because running is a series of hops from one foot to the other, right? So they're adding in some more run specific muscles too, that are key and are always active when we're running and can be super protective for our bodies for preventing the old common IT band syndrome or runner's knee or plantar fasciitis, right? Achilles tendon pain, like all of those common running related injuries are usually prevented. And the literature has shown us this with targeting specific muscle groups. So that kind of strength training is almost like the foundation. I feel like that should occur before we really take off in our running itself. So like those two, I would be a little bit biased toward starting first. But then once we get going with running, which is the third step of kind of like the run plan itself and what we're doing for training, it needs to be properly progressed. And you need to do it around like 4 types of runs, which are like the building blocks of any good training cycle. There are many different other fancier types of runs, but the 4 like key main ones, are your easy run and going at like your easy pace. Definitely integrating a long run into the mix in your weekly, training schedule. Even if you're not training for a race, there's one run that's longer than the others. I see so many people who do like, they start working together. They're like, yeah, I run like 3 times a week. I do 4 miles every time I go out there, or I run 4 times a week, and I do a 5 mile run every time. And I'm like, okay, so we're not getting the advantages of having like that one longer run in the schedule. And then adding in eventually some faster work or quote unquote speed work, whether it is like a tempo or threshold pace work or interval work, and really doing some more faster reps. So kind of mastering those 4 basic runs. And then there's like other runs where we add in pace work into long runs, and we do, different types of speed work and progression run. Like all that fancier stuff isn't needed, right? Like when you kind of start out and when you're balancing, a well-designed run plan. So that's kind of like the running element.
Perfect. Yeah, I really like that. I think that's something I wish I knew going into running, because I think, I'd heard of all these things like, you need to do a speed workout and you need to run at a slower pace for your easy runs. But for me, my mindset block was I don't need to do that. I'm just a beginner runner, or I'm just running for fun. I don't need to necessarily do that. So what do you see, because you've worked with thousands of runners, what do you see as common blocks or like hiccups or mental blocks that stop a runner from growing and progressing like maybe they should, even if it's not linear?
Yeah, so I guess the biggest one is really the training and the run aspect, and that's why I did, decide to get my run coaching certification. I wanted to learn more about the coaching aspect, and really now how I work with runners is through a coaching model of actually, designing someone's run plan and combining that with their strength exercise for running with the specific like rehab based exercise for their injury. Um, but it is these training errors, and the most common, by far, is that everyone is running their easy runs too fast. It is just it is amazing. And we all do it in the beginning because I think a lot of people, when they think about running, either they go back to their childhood and was like, running sucked. Like, I hated running for punishment for my sport. And like, who in the heck wanted to run? And it was always hard. So you felt like it always was associated with something being very hard. So then when we do it as adults, we're like, okay, if it's not hard, then I'm not probably getting the benefits I need. Or a lot of people go into it, quite frankly, for weight loss, which there's definitely pros and cons to that, by the way. But if you go into it with that mindset and you come from it from like a spin class mindset or boot camp where you're like sweating, you're huffing and puffing the whole time. If you take that mental frame and do that as you start to run, like you're definitely going to get injured because you're going at an intensity that's way too high for what your tissues can adapt to. So that's kind of the big one, is that you feel like it should be hard and it should be easy. It should feel easy. You should be able to have a conversation with someone, right? You should, be able to breathe during it. So that's the most common mistake by far, is that we're running our easy runs, recovery runs, whatever we want to call them. If no one's doing speed work, then it's all their runs they're doing during the week are running too fast. And
Yeah.
then I would say, either stacking on mileage, running way too many times back to back days throughout the week and not embracing a rest and recovery run. Like I said, I used to be a 6 day a week runner. Um, Definitely not a fan of the run streak at all. So I apologize if anyone's listening to this and they're a run streaker, but I'm sorry. I
They
think
should know I'm not either.
the benefits of getting one dedicated rest recovery day will outweigh any run streak. And I understand a lot of people do it just to develop the habit and to like challenge themselves to do something that's like hard, to go outside and run every day. But honestly, after you've developed the habit of running, challenge yourself to actually dedicate a rest and recovery day, because that's what's best for your body. So challenge your mind to actually do the right thing. So rest and recovery days, like, and not stacking too many days or quality days together with some speed work. Those are the most common things. And it's just amazing when you don't have to think about that yourself. Like myself, I have a run coach. So it's like, even I don't even want to have the mental, fortitude to like design my own run plan, and to have someone else who's going to like offload that is like huge for anyone. Cause most people are like super busy, right? We're all working multiple jobs, and you don't want to have to like design and move things around and shift things and know, is it okay to do this or that? So that's really what we like provide clarity on. I would say those are the two like biggest mistakes, and then I guess the third one would be like, runners who just run and don't strength train, which I'm sure you come in contact with a lot of folks.
Yeah, for sure. So, going off of like a rest day and recovering from a run, what do you do on your rest day? Because I know some people think like that's the day to cross train or that's the day to strength train or easy run. So, what do you do on your rest day? And then, how do you usually recover after a hard workout or like even like a race?
Yeah, and this is where I've really doubled down in these last 2 years and have embraced recovery. So I guess the first point is, it starts with nutrition fueling after that long run, that hard speed workout. Um, you want to think about, okay, now my body is like really recovering. And like I just did a really hard speed work on Monday and then hard strength after that. And I was like, my muscles need some recovery. So making sure you're fueling, and you have to think about, especially if you're busy with like work, because you forget to eat. And just make sure that, you mentioned protein before, make sure you're getting enough protein after these runs and workouts, in addition to carbs, right? Maybe getting some simple carbs initially to kind of get the blood sugars up and actually filter the protein to the muscles to start rebuilding, but then also some long-term carbs that's going to maintain that throughout the day, but then hydration, right? Like water and even electrolytes, depending upon the weather and depending upon how hard your effort was, how much you sweat. Definitely electrolytes is going to be huge. So like covering the nutrition is really, really important. The other thing, the one, low hanging fruit, it's free, everyone can do it, is actually sleep. And it's so hard for us to do that. It's probably the hardest. And I will admit, this is the one area that I feel definitely I'm still a little deficient in. I can say all the other areas, I feel like I'm almost at the mastery level. But this is the area that it's my goals, and it's slowly improving. Incremental progress. That's the other thing. It goes into like mindset, and we feel bad for ourselves, right? Like we beat ourselves up because we're not doing this, we're not doing it. But I'm going to take this as a win that I'm making incremental progress, because like I mentioned, the PhD years, it was literally 4 hours of sleep for like six years. Like, yeah, it was crazy. It was nuts when I think about it. But because I was there, living on 5 hours sleep wasn't bad for me after I was done with the PhD. And then I went to 6, and now I've been embracing 7 and really trying to shoot for 7. I know I should do more still. So again, incremental progress. So we're making some progress. But sleep, guys, it's when your body's actually repair. And it is when your hormone levels, if you don't get enough sleep, cortisol levels go up. That's stress hormone, which actually impedes muscle recovery. So just from a hormonal standpoint and just allowing your body to recover, and everyone can do it. It's free. Like it's not, paying for expensive cold plunge therapy or like whatever other gadget out there. Everyone can do it. So you got to sleep. You got to nourish the body. Other things that I would say I found helpful, especially after long runs, especially if you tend to get a little swelling in your ankles, or you don't have the best veins. Like I don't have great veins in circulation. Kind of stinks because I'm going to have like varicose veins in probably 10 years. Compression socks. So I love using compression socks after my long runs. That's kind of been huge. Epsom salt baths. So that has I do that for my feet, and like proper foot care in general, because we're doing a lot of pounding on our feet. So Epsom salt baths, and I think we probably talked about this on your big toe episode on the Healthy Runner podcast, but toe splays or toe spacers to allow a low load stretch to the deep muscles in your foot is important for increased blood flow, as well as help with alignment of your toes, and then helps with activation of your deep foot muscles. So that's another thing that I definitely incorporate after all of mine. And then you can do some, gentle foam rolling to increase some blood flow. Again, the more times we increase blood flow or move around, go for a walk, like walk your dog, right? Like anytime you increase blood flow, that's going to help stimulate recovery. So you could do some light stretching, some restorative yoga. No, you do not want to do like power yoga on your rest and recovery day. I just talked to a client yesterday who that's what she was doing, right? Or if someone really, you don't want to do a spinning class on your rest and recovery day. If you want to go out for an easy ride, I tell my clients just to flush the legs out. I'm okay with that, but we're not running, we're not strength training. If you want to do restorative yoga or a nice easy ride, or get on your Peloton and like, you know, be distracted with some, read a book while you're on your Peloton, just like getting the legs turning over, then that is recovery to me.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, all of this can sound overwhelming, but once you start to slowly add in these certain elements, and like you start to get a routine for what works best for you. Like I know for me, like I am that runner that has like 4 liquids out after a run, like my electrolytes, my coffee, my water, and chocolate milk is a favorite. So, and then it's like, and then I go for a walk, and then I do my mobility and take care of my feet, because my feet were like super sore after like a summer hot, long run. Um, but it's like you start to learn what works best for you and like your recovery, and that's what you need to stick with. You don't need to stick with trying all these, things that could take 5 hours after a run. Like that's not really realistic if we think about it. So just find what works best for you, but make sure that you are hitting like the main points of like, a little bit of mobility or walking, and making sure you're getting that nutrition in. Sleeping, I'm a master sleeper. I am very good at that. I feel like I have that nailed down. I also don't have kids though. But I think, when it comes to sleeping, for me, like putting my phone down an hour before I actually want to fall asleep, making sure that I have a really good pillow and a really good mattress, or mattress topper, and then I just fall asleep to the TV and I'm out. But another thing is that helped me was I used to get leg cramps during marathon training at night, and I started taking the magnesium pills. So that helped a lot too, because I'd get like
Mm.
restless legs. So all those things can, if it's affecting your sleep, it's affecting your recovery. So trying to just slowly implement these new things can definitely help with your recovery, which will overall help with your performance. And, all these things that we've talked about, the whole goal is to keep you running, to keep you healthy, and make sure that you're able to hit your goals, whatever your goals are. If it's just to finish a run, finish a run strong, or not even race and just enjoy running and keep running and push yourself, whatever it is. The whole goal is that all these small things that we talked about will add up to big things, but it will take time, and it does take, that slow implementation of adding in these certain actions. So I really appreciate everything that you have said. I feel like that is, we just covered so much, so many golden nuggets. I love it.
Oh my goodness, yeah, and even just quickly to add to that with the sleep piece, and I should have mentioned it with mindset that we talked about earlier, because this was key for me to getting in that relaxed state, is journaling. I've taken that up the last 2 years, which I would have. If you ever told me like journal, I'd be like, "What the like diary? What are you talking about?" But I've really embraced it, and honestly, like just
Yeah.
helping to ease anxiety, and even just reframing and having more gratitude for what you're doing throughout your day and your life, but then also relating to your running. So journaling and meditation. And I'm not a 20, 30 minute meditator yet, but I can do like up to 10 minutes now. And again, I thought that I would have like poo-pooed that, in the past, and be like, oh, that's just for like, people who are like zen, and like I'm a runner and I'm not like a yogi. And but it's been huge to like shut my brain down and shut it off to get more restful sleep, and which is important for recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. If you're like struggling with so many thoughts in your head, like they say to get your thoughts out of your head. So journaling is a great way, talking, before you go to bed, just about everything that you're thinking about, and then meditating to bring your breath back down to, that slow breath, because it's just going to be really hard to sleep if you're struggling with all these thoughts. I know I've been there before, but thank you so much, Dr. Scotty. Where can my followers find you? I know you have a great podcast, so let us know where we can find you.
Yeah, I guess if you're listening to this, then you like podcasts. So Healthy Runner Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, is probably, the first place to check out some of the episodes. We have, 220 episodes really dedicated to getting you stronger, running faster, but then enjoying lifelong injury-free running. So a ton of resources there. And then sparkhealthyrunner.com is kind of home base, the website. And we have a video YouTube channel, Spark Healthy Runner, as well, with over 300 videos of specific exercises, routines, deep dive trainings that we've done on kind of the 6 elements to growing as a runner that we talked about here. And then definitely Instagram. You're the Instagram queen, but at Spark Healthy Runner. If you are on IG, then you'll find some of my video content there, as well as some helpful tips on how we stay healthy as runners.
Awesome. I will link all that below. And also, don't you have Facebook?
Yes, yeah, we have a Facebook community as well, Healthy Runner Facebook community. But
Perfect.
yes, I'm on Facebook as well, and the business is on Facebook as well.
Cool. I will link all that below so everyone can make sure that they are able to connect with you. But thank you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, you're welcome. It was my pleasure. And I always love chatting about running and how we can do it to stay healthy for longevity. So thanks for the opportunity.
You're welcome. Thank you.